Ghost me. Sometimes those who wander are lost, read the final text he ever sent Alana. It had been a long week since his final correspondence, and the countless texts and voice messages she had relinquished on him had only piled up as an impassable rout of emotional water in her chest. After only a few months dating, Andrew had stopped answering her, and that final response had served as a digging thorn that she had dissected to no end. She had simply been quoting one of her favorite expressions, "Sometimes those who wander are not lost," and he had replied with the complete inverse of this foundational statement of her life, puzzling her for hours and days with no end. She had replied back with, "LOL, you know what I mean," hoping that it had only been a quippy joke that hadn't landed, and he was waiting to follow up with the real punchline. When he didn't respond, she came to believe that he had been geared toward hurting her the entire time, and the next string of texts she sent to his unresponsive phone followed the 5 stages of grief to a T. After giving him the benefit of the doubt, she then became angry, and then started bargaining, pleading for a response of any kind. Then depression fell over her like a blanket, and her girlfriend Stacy quickly noticed this one day as they were sitting down at the mall's food court one afternoon. "Just goes to show how much you can really know someone," Stacy said, furrowing her brow as she worked with the memory in her head. Or perhaps the smoothie she had already inhaled had caused her mind to freeze over. "I'm glad I never met him. Or maybe I should have. You know I have a great nose for creeps." Alana sighed, fiddling with her full, untouched plastic cup of water she'd gotten at the smoothie shop. "I didn't introduce you to him for that very reason. You're too judgmental." "Well, I should have saved you some time. How many times did you actually meet? Once, 2 times, and always in front of his house? Anyone who doesn't invite you in is hiding something." "He had roommates," Alana argued. "I've done similar things with my boyfriends. He didn't want his slob friends to be my first impression of him." "How can you still be defending a guy who ghosted you? You've never told a boy you love him before, so don't ask me again why I'm worried about the boyfriend I haven't talked to in a week." "Fine, if you're so worried for him, then go to his house. Maybe his roommates have killed him and are eating him as we speak. Would that make you feel better?" Alana slammed down her water cup so hard that it cracked and bled over the table. "You don't think I've thought about that?" Stacy laughed and scooted her chair away from the table in case Alana decided to toss the rest of the water into her heavily blushed cheeks. "That his roommates are eating him? No! Going to his house. I've thought about confronting him, but I don't think I can face off with someone who's already moved on. I won't put myself through that." Stacy frowned when the fun of her button pressing had run its course. "But what if he really is in trouble? Hell, his grandma could have been in the hospital for the week. I think you owe it to yourself to at least put that question to bed. Maybe he's laid up in bed, and there's room for one more." "Fuck off," Alana grunted, as she slouched down all the way into her uncomfortable metal chair. "Is it worth pursuing peace of mind if it proves to me he's just a jerk?" "Yes," Stacy said seriously. "Girl, the truth hurts. But you know me. I'll never know how to mind my own business. And if you don't go, I might just have to. You gave me an unsolved mystery. What the hell am I supposed to do with that?" "You're right." Alana smirked for the first time that day. "I'll never hear the end of it. If you really love the guy, trust him," she said, "and that's the only time you'll hear me give such good advice." She tossed the empty cup over her shoulder and missed the trash can completely. Alana's hatred for Andrew was quickly replaced with concern for his well-being, and although Stacy had insisted on following her to the house, Alana braved the wintry streets alone, riding the bus across town to the old side, and arrived at Andrew's house, an adobe-style domicile with an impressive collection of junk and trash littering the front porch. It did look like a group of young male roommates shared the house, as leaves clogged the gutters, paint peeled from the trim, and the lawn had been left to grow wild. Trying her best to suffocate her fear with the love that still sat tender in the seat of her chest, she approached the front porch and knocked on the door. No one answered. Not even a dog barked from the other side, even though Andrew had claimed that one of his roommates owned a pet. She thought about calling his number and listening with her ear to the door to see if she could hear it ringing from the other side, but quickly shook her head at her own self. She tried. There was really nothing else she could do short of banging the door down. As she was walking away, she watched someone clanging with the gate at the bottom of the walk. Adrenaline quickly spiked her blood. but it wasn't Andrew who approached her on the concrete path. Automatically, she assumed it was one of his roommates, and she racked her brain for one of their names as she made eye contact with the man, who wore a full beard and a navy blue pantsuit. He also had one of those professional businessman haircuts she'd seen in commercials for her local law firms, with the perfect ratio of buzz job and gel parting hairline along the right side of the head. Alana's first thought was how handsome and tall this man truly was, most likely in his late 20s, while she was only 19. She almost forgot this fact when she saw the bouquet of flowers in his hand and automatically assumed they were for her. "Oh, hello, are you one of Tina's friends?" he asked, smiling politely but not offering the flowers or any kind of handshake her way. He stopped about 6 feet away from her, even as she stupidly continued on until they were in breathing distance. "Tina?" she asked with a fumbling voice to match her feet. "Yeah, I just assumed, but there are enough people living in that house for me to assume incorrectly," he offered. This time he did hold up his hand as she gratefully shook it. It was as warm and thick as she'd hoped it was. "The name's James," he said, and she told him hers. "I'm Tina's boyfriend. I assume you must be one of Travis's friends, or maybe Andrew?" Her eyes flashed with recognition for the first time. "Yes," she barked, too excitedly for her visitor's volume level. "Well, sort of friends. We used to date." The tall man frowned down at her, allowing his gaze to drift slightly to rest on the house. "Sorry to hear that. I'm not sure what Tina and I are anymore, either." Alana filed that info away in her head for future knowledge, mentally kicking herself for not putting more effort into her makeup and hair for the day. She was still wearing her dog-chewed moccasins for pity's sake. "I was just coming by to reconcile," he said. "I don't know if you know her at all." "No, I haven't met any of Andrew's roommates," she shot back at once. "Well, it isn't like her to ignore me like she has been. I'm here to get to the bottom of it." He shrugged with his flowers in hand. "Am I going too far, Alana?" "You're gonna think I'm lying," Alana said, finding it almost impossible to swallow the hot barb in her throat. "But I'm here for the same reason." "Really? How so?" "Andrew hasn't been answering my texts either." Now James really looked concerned, and he proceeded past her to toss the flowers in the trash heap and knock roughly on the door until it shook in its frame. Alana came up behind him, swaying back and forth uncertainly. You think they're in trouble, then? Tina, Andrew, and what was his name?" "Yes, I think they're in trouble," he replied without meeting her eyes, and he did not waste a moment in pushing open the door to reveal a living room that matched the porch outside. Dirty dishes and trash were piled on every surface, including the top of the tube TV and the speakers of the ancient and dust-encrusted stereo. "I had no idea this is how he lived," Alana said. Seeing that it was an adobe-style house, there was no second floor, so they wasted no time in covering every square inch, and this was not a difficult task. There was only one bedroom in the house, which was most concerning to Alana and James. "You haven't been in here either, then?" she asked him. "No, she always came over to my place. I picked her up here, though," he replied distractedly as he closed the door on the bedroom. It didn't look like anyone had slept on the floor mattress in decades, and the trash and piles of crumpled cardboard boxes made it impossible to enter anyway. "Why would they tell us they lived in this squalor hole?" Alana questioned. "So they could ghost us later, I guess," he said with a quickly fading voice. "If we went looking for them, they could just disappear." Alana's eyes were drawn to the tube television when it flickered for a moment with static. She squared herself up in front of the screen, inspecting her own reflection in the glass. "Who the hell still has a tube TV?" she asked herself. She used the power button and felt a mechanism slide and trigger underneath her with the trapdoor that gave way and sent her plummeting onto the hard floor below. She hadn't fallen far, just enough to turn her ankle and bring stars to her vision as she collected in a ball. She looked up instantly at the letterbox square of light, some 12 feet high, in the ceiling above her. Everything else around her was shadows that danced with a far-off flickering light. James poked his head through the opening, but his face was too dark to determine what he was thinking. He certainly wasn't calling down to her. "James!" she screamed. "What? Please help me!" "I'm sorry, Alana, but there's only one way out of here," he explained calmly. "You gotta follow the hallways. Find Andrew and bring him back. That's why you're here." "What are you?" she screamed. "You did this!" "No, I only rigged the trapdoor for people like you. Like me," he said. "I was led to this house too, the hell if I know why." But there was a door in the floor, the one you just fell through. I never went down, but I've heard Tina down there, screaming. Find her and Andrew and bring them back to this door. Then he pulled away and left her to scream until she lost her voice, jumping with all her strength at the escape hatch just beyond reach. And when she checked her phone, she saw that she had no reception. Her only choice from there was to follow the flickering hallway, with burned-out lights in the ceiling that still buzzed from dirty electricity. The single claustrophobic hallway opened into an office or reception area of some kind, but there were no pieces of furniture, ringing phones, or doors leading to offices. At least here there were lights, but they dried out her eyes and filled her head with static that seemed to cancel out her thoughts. The reception area opened into several passageways, all leading to more rooms of differing sizes, carpets, and colored paint. But these slight derivations in decor were so slight that she almost missed the changes, from off-color white to eggshell, from shag carpeting to popcorn ceilings. But there were never any windows. Everything still had that mothball smell and waiting room atmospheres. All the while she screamed for help, navigating from one room to the next and not caring that she was hopelessly lost. At least every room she entered was different, as she assured herself, and that told her she was progressing. After passing through the fifth room, she came to a passage fully in the dark. Up until that point, she had insisted on following a straight line through the labyrinth in case she wanted to backtrack. But now she would have to choose one of the left or right branches. She decided that she would rather turn back completely and hope that someone on the street could hear her cries. There was no telling how far this underground complex stretched, and when she checked her phone, she saw that nothing had changed. The minute she took it out, she watched another screen light up in the dark hall directly in front of her. It was enough light to illuminate the face of a young woman staring back at her. "Hi," she said, and even though Alana had already seen her before she spoke, she jumped. "I have a phone here we've been using. You can use that if you like." "Who?" Alana stared desperately down at the screen in her own hand, there in the middle of the empty room, and her voice returned to her after bouncing back from down one of the far passageways. "I'll trade you," the girl said, in the cast of her cell phone light. "It doesn't work for us anymore, but it should for you." "How do you know?" Alana managed. "The old phone works briefly for every newcomer, but your new one should work for me. I can call anyone you want. I can probably get you help." "Who are you?" Alana asked. "Tina," the girl responded. "James is up there. He trapped me down here," the girl nodded. "He sent the last few down here searching for me," she explained dryly. "He's a complete psycho. I'm sorry I ever started texting him. You know, he's the one who trapped Andrew down here, as he was jealous I was texting him." "He's down here with you? Where?" "Hiding. We take our turns with the phone," Tina went on. "Whoever has the new one can leave this place for a while. I spend my time with boys I like, just like Andrew hits up the girls. But there are a few of us down here, like you, Alana. We take our turns. So you'll get the phone soon, or the next one, when it stops working for the rest of us. How do you get out? Show me." "We just kind of wake up in the house above us. It's not something we can control, it just happens. But the only way we can leave is by contacting someone on the surface. That establishes a real connection. Makes us real again, solid." "With the phone?" Alana brandished it at her shadowed visitor. "It has no reception. I'm telling you, it'll work for us," Tina explained. "That's how Andrew contacted you, with this phone, which we traded with the last girl who came down here." "Girl? What girl?" "We never learned her name, but she's got to be around here somewhere," Tina replied with the same emotionless candor. "No one dies down here. They just get lost. They run off and can't find their way back." "Run off?" "Here, I'll toss you the phone. We'll slide them across the floor at the same time." Her face ducked away as she bent over to place the phone screen up on the carpet. She prepared to slide it. "Why would I give you my phone?" Alana snapped. "Because it's the only way any of us can contact the outside world. Once one of us takes it back up to the surface, we'll charge it, and then it should work for you. But you have to give it away. Will you text my friend Stacy for me? It's unlocked, and she's one of the only contacts. Just let her know I'm alive under Andrew's house. Will you let her know?" "I will," Tina said straight-facedly. "Slide it on 3. And your phone still has charge?" "It hasn't been to the surface for a week or so, but it has half charge. Ready?" Alana placed her own phone on the carpet and slid it across the way on the count of 3 with Tina. She watched it disappear into the darkness and was surprised when the other phone, an old clamshell, bounced off her sneaker. She was about to call after Tina, but she had already disappeared with her phone. "Call Stacy, you promised!" Alana shot after her. Then she checked the flip phone at her feet and saw that it indeed had reception, a few bars, and a half charge as promised. Looking at the contact list, there were a few saved numbers, including hers, and she followed the script of her text message conversation with Andrew for a few beats before one of the battery bars blinked out of existence. Without another thought, she punched in Stacy's number from her memory and called it. Her friend answered on the third ring with a mouthful of something, berating the unknown robo-caller for disturbing her bath time. "Stacy, it's me, Alana, calling from another phone," she yelled into the receiver. She had already turned on her heel to follow the straight line of hallways back to what she could only hope was the way she came in. "Alana, what the hell? Where are you? I can barely hear you. Are you talking through one of those tin-can shoestring phones?" "I'm underground in some complex. It's never ending. I'm..." "What? I can't hear you. You're where?" "Underground. I don't know. Under Andrew's house. I'll text you the address." "Andrew, is this his phone?" But her voice died in mid-sentence, and Alana looked at the black screen to see the battery had officially died. And then the room shook so violently with what sounded like the thundering footsteps of a giant that the lights dimmed a few levels. Her first instinct was to run through endless halls, searching the ceiling for the trapdoor but never finding it, even as she passed through the 5th room that should have contained her one exit. So she kept running, and the footsteps thundered so loudly that blue emergency lights switched on. Then she started fleeing down any passageway she could find, just to put as much space between her and those approaching footfalls as possible. But she soon learned that she was running toward them when a hulking mass the size of a pickup truck filled up the ceiling-high doorway in front of her, and its black, featureless face screamed with a voice she could only attribute to a prehistoric dinosaur from the movies. Claws gripped the underside of the doorway as it ducked its massive head under for a closer look at her, and a silver and white reflective, revolving disc opened where its face should have been, expanding and narrowing at its apex like a funnel full of needlepoint teeth. She didn't even realize that she had dropped the phone as she took off the other way, screaming, crying, and then suddenly quiet. Her voice receded into the darkness with her haphazard steps, and the room swallowed everything else. Before a clawed foot smashed the hard plastic into splinters in the shag, a single message lit up the screen from Stacy, delivered, somehow, but unread.